Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Raquel Fours, a Light Elegance brand ambassador based out of Toronto, Ontario and Thunder Bay, Ontario. I'm going to show you a spooky, sexy nail demo that I created for you today. From left to right, we've got some fishnet, a realistic skull, Old English lettering, and requested by some of my Canadian Light Elegance family members, a reverse French technique. I'm gonna recreate this entire design, starting with the fishnet nail. So I like to put a little layer of Ideal Pink One Step to create a natural pink base, kind of like the skin of the nail. And I'm putting in a pretty thick slip layer followed by a little dollop. I want the pink to be as pink as the reverse French pink nail. So after it's self-leveled, I just pop it in the LED dot for 30 seconds, and while that's curing, I'm just gonna mix up a little bit of the sheer transparent black with JimmyGel and black tie. This will be our stocking part of the fishnet. I find like adding a little transparent black behind the fishnet just gives it a heightened, more elevated fishnet look. So mixing that together with just a little gel polish brush and painting it right on the inhibition layer of the Ideal Pink One Step after it's come out the curing lamp. And I'm really smearing it on, putting quite a bit of pressure. I don't want it to be too thick. I want it to be nice and thin and even and give us the right kind of coverage we need. And that could be a really sheer black or a darker fishnet like I'm doing today. So once you think that's pretty even, you can cure it. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to put some line work over it. While that's curing, I'm just going to put some black tie over top of our next tip to get the background ready for the skull nail. And I'm using a buttercream because we're also going to be foiling over top of it. So along with its perfect application and how it just glides on, it's also necessary for the foiling that we're going to be doing. So just a nice even layer of black tie buttercream with the award-winning gel polish bling brush, and pop that in the LED dot for 30 seconds. And take out our little fishnet nail and give it a good buff so it's ready for the line work or decoration that we're going to paint on. She's all set there. I like to press on the foil when it's pretty fresh out of the lamp, so I've got my little silver metallic foil piece ready and leaving enough space for the skull nail. And I just want to encapsulate that nail with JimmyGel. So when I buff it and get it ready for the skull decoration, it is not going to hit my foil. So JimmyGel is just going to seal in that foil nicely and evenly. You can get that JimmyGel on pretty quickly, nice and even. Check it with a light beam, covers all my foils. Pop that in for 1 minute. So do my JimmyGel, and while that's curing, I'm gonna get started on the line work. I've got the primary black gel paint and our lovely stripy brush. Gonna put the tip back on the little tip holder and get started with the line work. So I'm gonna start with the top band of the fishnet stocking, or I guess it'd be like a thigh high. So that thicker elastic piece that holds up the thigh high, I want it nice and straight across the nail. And I'm gonna cure that when I think it's pretty even across. Cure that for a minute. Primary paints need a minute cure. After it's out, I'm gonna use my nail as like a little palette to get the stripy brush really saturated evenly and the lines nice and thin. I like to start from the middle and work my way down. So nice diagonal lines, make sure that they are parallel, and that's probably the best advice, not to get confused with where you're starting, where you're ending, but just to make them as parallel as possible, and keeping the pressure of the brush really even across the nail. As the lines become longer, you might need to move the brush as well as moving the finger or the nail. So pulling both away from each other like evenly to keep the pressure of the brush super consistent all the way across the nail. And sometimes we hold our breath at this part, but with the stripy brush, it honestly makes it so much easier. So yeah, just grabbing a bit more of the primary black paint for my little nail palette and going in with the long stripes. Want to make sure I have enough gel for those. These ones are going on super nice and thin. I'm really happy with them. So after I do one set of stripes, I like to go all one way first, cure that, and go all one way the second time, starting from the middle again. So after the first set, I'll pop it in the LE dot for 60 seconds again. I do not want any chance of the first set of stripes that I've done to be wiped away in any of the second set I'm doing. So I'll just put it between those two fingers so I don't cure my thumb. Little tip. So going in, starting from the middle, and this second set's always trickier because the lines sort of give you an optical illusion, but trying to be symmetrical, keep your lines parallel, you got this. I always like to make sure that my starting point, those little triangles at the top, they all look the same too as I'm going. So keeping your lines parallel and working our way down. And I'm really just mapping out where my lines start and where my lines end on the other side and trying to keep them the same. And it looks like my diamonds are looking pretty good, so I'm happy with the overall effect. If a line sways out a little here or a little bit there, just try and correct it without making your lines too thick and assess it. Don't redo a whole line if it's not that far off. The other ones all look good. Just keep going. There's going to be a line near the end that I will kind of wipe away and redo, but the fact that I've cured everything else underneath really gives me the flexibility to do that for lines that I'm truly not happy with. So finishing up these little ones at the top here. Know what this stocking kind of reminds me of? If anyone's seen the episode of SpongeBob where he and Patrick like dress up, and I don't know, the Goofy Goobers episode, like this looks like Patrick's leg kind of, I realized afterward, but I still love it. so here I am. I just really want to redo that line alone, and because it's the one on the outside, it's easy for me to wipe away, so that one's much better. And now I'm gonna go in and saturate my brush again and get started on the garter or harness part of the nail. I love this look, especially with little metal studs, and so you want to try and make your line as thick as your stud is, so it makes sense. If you have a little hoop stud, or if I have little squares with almost like a little gap in the middle, and I'm trying to make it as thick as that stud is so it looks good when I place the stud on. I'm gonna do a nice horizontal line. I don't want it as thick as the elastic band on the fishnet, but I want it a little thicker than the fishnet strands themselves. So a nice line going straight up from the middle. And when I'm satisfied with that, I'm gonna cure it in the LE dot for 60 seconds. Again, making sure not to cure my thumb. Gonna wipe that off and put everything away. I like to say thank you to my things when I put them away. It's a good practice. Like, thank you, Miss Primary Black. Thank you, Black Tie. All right, so to stick on the stud, you can use any builder gel. I'm just grabbing the Ideal Pink. It's not gonna look pink because I'm grabbing such a small amount. It's a really tiny stud, and then I'm gonna encapsulate it all as well. So you don't need a lot, just a little boop, and wipe off the excess and grab your little stud. So I just got these from a random nail art distributor, Amazon, whatever. They're just little Japanese studs or nail art frames. Trying to make it nice and center. Check her out. She looks cute. Pop that in for 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna encapsulate it all with JimmyGel. because I don't want any of the little lines to show up in the top apex afterward. And I'm sorry for how rough my thumb looks. I was actually pickling over the weekend and I got a little blister, so just don't mind. Don't mind my wound. I'm on my way healing. My Q and Lou really helps me to heal, so I'm putting oil on every day. Love that stuff. So cure that 60 seconds. And on to the next nail, which is our Old English lettering. Ooh. So I'm going to be buffing that anyways to prepare for the decoration. Kind of came off my nail tip holder. I love painting on a buffed nail. I find that it keeps all the lines nice and crispy. So just preparing that while my JimmyGel is curing. Always taking advantage of the time that you have. So grabbing my primary white now because my fishnet nail's done, and I'm going to move on to the fun part of our skull nail. We've got the foil laid down, we've got it all buffed, and I'm just going to grab the shorty and primary white and the tiniest little amount, and I'm a little bit out of frame, I realize, but I just kind of painted the top edge of the skull there. So I grabbed Google Images, I just typed in the skull, and I found the skull that had the right shading and the right angle that I wanted for this nail to work off of as a reference, and I'm just kind of doing the perimeter of the skull with primary white, and I'm not worrying about the lines all looking the same or looking super clean and crisp, because this is supposed to be a realistic skull. It's not like a pop art skull, it's not a cartoon skull, so I want those lines to be a little rough, to be a little bit uneven, and have that shaded look to them. So kind of going around in the cheekbone, the teeth area, and the bottom part of his little chin, and starting around the back end of the skull. And I love working with primary white on black. It's just so pigmented, so beautiful. You can get all this dimension in it so easily that your nail looks like it has this like really high art quality, but it's just the primary white, guys. It's just the brushes. So pretty much happy with the perimeter. I'm gonna go in and mark out the areas inside the skull that I want to keep black. So just so I don't shade over top of them, I don't go too crazy when I'm filling in the skull, I'm just gonna map out those black areas that I want to keep black. So the little nose bone, the little eye on the right, the eye on the left, or the ocular bone. I guess there's no eye left in there. So there's kind of like a point on his cheekbone that's quite highlighted and bright. So any spots that I'm seeing right now that are light, I'm gonna make lighter just to make my life easier. Kind of thickened out the edge of that there. And there's a little section behind the teeth too of the skull that is darker. So always check back to your reference picture. If you feel like you're painting away with just memory, just trust your reference picture. Go back to it. It's there for a reason. I've wiped off my brush now just slightly, and I'm kind of smearing the perimeter primary white down across, ombreing, if you will. I call it smearing because like my brush is basically dry, and I'm just kind of taking the thicker white pieces. Sorry, I kind of blocked that part. I'll be out of your way in a moment. And dragging them down to fill in the skull, and you'll get some wonderful gray shades. Just dragging a nice dry brush and with just like a little bit of that primary white. This is super easy, you guys. It doesn't take very long. If you've seen my gorilla nail that I posted, this is exactly how I did it too. I just mapped out the prominent parts, started to shade and fill in the areas that needed to be more mid-tone. So yeah, just dragging it down. It's already starting to look so beautiful. Little boop, 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 boop. And once I'm pretty happy with that, I'm gonna clean my brush off again, and I'm gonna do what I call like anti-smearing, or anti-shading. Like you have a completely clean brush and you're dragging out the negative space. So it's almost like you're erasing or smudging away. Oh, I love how pigmented these primary paints are, and you can do so much with them, guys. So kind of fading out the little bone, the eye pieces, just giving the skull as much dimension as needed. Again, check back at your reference picture, never hurts. No matter how many times I've done a skull, I still want to look at a skull. So I've got a nice little dollop, or I shouldn't say dollop, it's just a little beep beep, but I'm picking out some highlights, starting with the teeth. The front teeth are the biggest, so working out, make your teeth smaller, thinner, tinier to get that realistic effect so you don't go overboard. And the tiny little bottom teeth. This time I want to have a clean edge, so I am putting more product on my brush than I pretty much did when I painted the whole perimeter. So picking out highlights again, little cheekbone, going back, I looked and I saw that the upper lip was a little bit more prominent. Get the spookiness back into it. Blend that out. There's little reflect lines that like you can pick out too. So where the light hits from behind, those like kind of sparkly outliers, I don't know. And then I just wanted to make the skull a little bit rounder, a little bit bigger, more prominent. Looks good. So any final touches now is just kind of showing off. So I just kind of wanted to highlight those eye bones. Cure for 60 seconds. Yeah. While that's curing, we can put everything away. Say thank you, we're done with those. Thank you, Miss Primary White. Thank you, Miss Shorty. Shorty, a little baddie. All right, so this is the reverse French nail that we're gonna get started. I'm gonna do a thin layer of the Ideal Pink One Step to create that skin-like background again. Painting a nice even layer of that. And I'm gonna cure it for 30 seconds. While that's curing, I'm going to put a matte top coat over top of our skull nail to finish her off. Cure that for 60 seconds. And taking Ideal Pink Builder, bring out our reverse nail. I've wiped off the inhibition layer because I don't want this slip layer to run. So yeah, I like working with like a little slip layer when I do my reverse Frenches. And I start at the nose, or where I want it to be the highest point of my smile line. And then I work back into the corners or into the deep part of the smile line. And I'm just using the brush to make those round shapes, kind of like a mini oval nail on top of our stiletto or whatever you're working on, whatever shape you're doing. And once I'm happy with the perimeter of that, I'm going to take a nice dollop and start with the reverse French pink area and just agitating it so it moves easier, but I still have the structure of a builder gel when I need that nice ledge or that smile line, edge line. So need a little bit more, got a little bit of big nail, so blending that with the first dollop, which is possible with Light Elegance products because it's so wonderful. They never have like a weird line where the two dollops met. They just work so nicely, guys. Just kissing it to each corner, kiss, mwah, mwah. And when I get closer to the end of my smile line, I'm just really floating the tip of my brush up because I want it to have a nice high ledge, or high enough. Like, this is probably a partially finished nail that I'm working on. All the other ones that I've worked on so far are a fully finished, fully shaped nail, just adding decoration. This is probably like halfway between structure and done, because we don't want a bunch of work when we're going in for a fill. I don't want to be filing away a bunch of reverse Frenches for my whole life, so I don't need a huge ledge. I just need enough to put in my color or a little bit of glitter. So cleansing that, and I'm going to grab a perfect file, going in with the more grittier side, the 100 grit, and putting some pressure on the edge and trying to hold it into a spot firmly. I don't want to move too much from this line. I want it to be nice and sharp. Going in how you would shape an oval. Shaping a reverse French ledge is a little bit trickier on a tip than it is on a client, but you've already created such a beautiful smile line. When you lay down your gel, it's not hard to kind of create a nice ledge. The goal is to have like almost 90 degrees from your smile line to your top arch. So once you're happy with how sharp your edge is, or your perimeter, I'm just going to smooth out the top arch to kind of meet up the ledge in a 90-degree angle. And your sidewalls are going to be thinner than the very tip, or the very, like, the teeth of your smile line, or I kind of like to call it the nose of the smile line. Once we start working on other parts of the reverse French nail, it kind of makes sense to call it the nose for some reason, but I just like both those lines to meet up at a nice 90-degree angle, and your highest point is going to be that tip there, and your lowest points are going to be closer to the cuticle or the sidewalls of your reverse French nail. Once you're happy with your smile line or the pink part of your reverse French nail, cleanse your nail and grab whatever you want, whatever color you want for the tip of your French. So I'm going to go in with black tie to kind of fit in with the black silver nude theme, and my gel polish brush, and just painting it liberally. Gonna put most of the product on the very tip of that smile line, or the nose I like to call it, and paint it into the corners of the smile line and get a nice even coat of the black tie. And really it's just kind of like painting in the lines. Your ledge really guides you. Obviously I'd be having to look out for skin. If you're working on a client, you might want to switch to a smaller brush a little bit sooner, but I'm just using the gel polish brush as much as I can to get into those areas because it's faster. And just cleaning that off, grabbing my swirly and using her to paint into the deep corners of the smile line and also kind of up along the wall of the ledge. Being careful not to paint on top of the pink, but I think painting up along the wall of the ledge as high as it makes sense to do kind of gives it like a more professional look. It gives you more room to lay down your glitter. Your glitter is not going to look like it's coming out of the edges. It has sort of like a basin to sit in, a nice bowl of black. So we're just making that nice and even all the way across the front of the ledge. Doesn't matter how far up on the ledge you go, just as long as it's even all the way around. So I'm happy with that. Going to cure that for 30 seconds. Thank you, Miss Black Tie. And thank you, Miss Swirly. Put her away carefully. I like to use my pinky finger and my ring finger to guide in the cap of some of those more delicate brushes. You have to be really careful. And now we go in with some glitter. I love Expensive on black. I think it just shines beautifully. I'm using an old gel polish brush that's gotten a little frayed over the years, but we never throw away brushes. They just find different purposes. And again, I'm putting the highest concentration of the product or the dollop like directly, I love the caps of those, directly on the tip of the smile line, or the teeth, the nose, if you will, and just lightly feathering it backward toward the deep edges of those smile lines, trying to get those glitters as close up to the edge as possible without going over that pink. We've created a nice black basin though for the glitter to sit in, and I do like kind of a little outline of black still for contrast. If I wanted to cover that black line that's close to where the pink meets the black, I would use maybe a silver metallic buttercream, but I want that contrast, I want that dimension. I'm going to take a little bit more glitter and just try and get it as close as possible. But yeah, like I said, I like that it's there. I think it goes with a spooky gothic look. I think this is a really good nail also for like a New Year's look. I love black and silver on New Year's. So if we take a look at it from other angles, you can see that you don't have a lot of encapsulation to do. It's pretty much almost as high as the pink is, you know. And that's what I'm about. Less work later. Like, what you want for an effect for the nail now does not mean that you have to do all this work later. There are other ways. So curing that for 30 seconds, putting away my glitter, don't need her anymore, cleaning off my glitter brush, putting that away, and getting the JimmyGel. So putting a nice dollop right where I put all my other dollops, right on that tip of the smile line, and working it back into the corners of the smile line again, wanting to make sure that I cover all the black. The glitter did a good job of helping that. When I go and file my finished nail after I cure the JimmyGel, I don't want to hit any of the decoration. I want it just to look smooth and perfect, and making sure to fill in any low spots so you're not filing and in through any of the decoration on the thinner sides or the tip. So cured that for 60 seconds, cleansing it, and just going to go ahead and finish file that. So I'm starting off with the rougher side of the file because where the JimmyGel meets the pink, there's going to be a little dip, and once I see that all the shiny dips are gone, I'll go back in with the thinner side of the file, the finer grit, and just make sure that I'm happy with all the edges and the perimeter. And if you wipe and cleanse it and see that you have filed through any black, you can take a tiny brush and just sort of like apply it into the gaps, but she looks pretty good to me. So that's ready for flat matte top coat. Apply that and cure that for 60 seconds. And then we'll get started on our very last nail, which is the Old English lettering. So we've got our black tie base, buffed and ready for decoration, primary white, and our lovely stripy brush. And I look up Old English lettering online. There's a font that I pretty much always go with. The name of the font, if you're looking it up, is called Old London, and it's on dafont.com. So I'm making a palette again on my thumb, and I'm just kind of imagining where I want the letters to be in sort of like a moniker arrangement. I've chosen the letters L-E not only to pay homage to Light Elegance, but also because I find L is an easier one we can start with, and E is very common for lettering and one of my more difficult letters, I would say. So I like to start with the thicker lines that are in the middle. So look for the one line or the two lines that are in the middle and that are sort of parallel, and start with those and put those in the center of where you want your letter to be. And then just building out from them, paying attention to your little flicks, because some flicks on parallel lines are different. Even though they're parallel lines, they might not be parallel flicks. Don't make any assumptions, just constantly look back at your picture, saturate your brush, and make nice, even, steady flicks. I tried my best not to block the design too much for you guys while I do this, but Old English lettering is tough, guys. I hope that watching me do it just makes you feel a little more confident that you could do it yourself. Just have your stripy brush and really pigmented paints and work from thin to thick, because you can always make a line thicker, but it's a lot harder to make a line thinner. So paying attention to where your flicks start and end, how thin they need to be. I'll always go thin. You can make it thicker later. So I've made a little tiny little outlier, I'm just gonna use my smile line brush to squeak it back in. Sometimes you don't need to wipe off the entire nail. I love using smile line brush for fixing up any really intense line work moments that need to be saved rather than restarted. So filling in the little sections, trying to be careful not to go outside the line. A lot of Old English letters have this little swivelly swoop at the top. That's one of my favorite parts. Something you want to keep really thin, even though it has a look like it might be thicker. It always looks better when it's nice and thin, so just being careful with the amount of product you have on your brush for this. And then the last part of the L is these little tiny spikes that I guess come off the side of it. A lot of Old English letters have those too. So there's the big one on the top and the little one on the bottom. Makes it look very medieval, very finished. And pop that in the light for 60 seconds. Careful not to cure your thumb. And let's get started on the E now. The E only has one sort of thicker, stubbier little line in the middle. And I'm not going to start with the crescent. I never really have success when I do, so I'm just going to start with that little. And I'm not going to make it too long because we can always make things longer, we can always make things thicker. But when you work with such pigmented colors like this, you have to be kind of careful not to go outside the lines because, yeah, corrections can get a little muddy. So just slowly building out that little swoop. The hardest part of the E is all the little diagonal and parallel lines that have to meet up in certain spots for them to look correct and have nice edges. So just trying to make this crisp diagonal line for these thicker, blockier chunks of the E to be built off of. So making our top line here nice and parallel, nice and tiny. I'm going to go in and make the long, thin line that kind of goes straight down the E. Not every Old English letter has a super skinny baby line, but I love the contrast of that in them. So another diagonal, another little blocky guy, that's sort of like the middle stick of the E. And basically at this point, all you have to do is fill in those blocks and create your crescent. So the hard part's over. I'm getting enough on my brush to fill in those spots. If you really want to be careful, you can grab your shorty, but I'm getting a little overconfident. I'm just going to fill in these little spots with my Stripy brush that already has a bunch of primary white on it. So I'm just being careful, using the tiniest little strokes and pulling out the color to those little points that I want to keep crisp. There is a section across that diagonal that I just want to smooth out. I don't know if you saw it. It looks a little fuzzy to me. Sorry, I'm kind of blocking it here, but I just used the smile line brush again and smoothed out that diagonal at the top left there. So now I'm taking some product on the very tip of my Stripy and just extending out the top right corner of the E. Give it that extra little flare, make it look a little more decorative. Make my corners look sharper. So mapping out the crescent from where I want the crescent to start to where I want the crescent to end, and again going in much thinner than what the crescent actually should be, because we can always make it thicker. It'd be nice to paint a perfect crescent, like moon in one swipe. Oh, one of these days. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it with these paints and these brushes. There they're next level, guys. So I'm just smoothing out the edges and thickening up the crescent there. Are you so excited, guys? We are almost done. Look at those beautiful nails in the background. Are you following along right now? Let me know if you are in the comments. All right, so just smoothing out the curve. There's a few little harsh lines. I don't want to go too thick though, being very careful. If I was wearing a Fitbit, it would be telling me to breathe. And I'm gonna pop that in before I mess around with it too much. All right, so 60 seconds for the primary paints. And I'm gonna put away all my things, wipe off that nail. Say thank you to Miss Stripy. Put her away very carefully. Thank you to the smile line. And thank you, Miss Primary White. When I was thinking about what I should do around the Old English lettering, if I should do some roses, if I should do maybe some more glitter, I settled on just a cute little heart. The set was looking a little scary, a little spooky. I needed to brighten it up, make it a little cuter, a little girlier, and what better way to do that than with pink. And I just want to show off how amazingly pigmented this is as well. You don't even need to start out making a little white heart and put pink over top of your white to make it pop. You don't need to do that with this pink. You just put it right over black and it has nice clean lines and nice bright pink. So making my two little hearts, kind of connecting them, getting it started, and then grabbing my shorty and just using her to pull down the tip of that heart to make it nice and sharp, nice and symmetrical, have a nice clean point. Always going from little to big. You can always put more, it's hard to put less. And just that little corner, the little inner corner of the top of the heart, I like it to be nice and sharp too. And just look at that coverage, you guys. What a gorgeous pink. Light Elegance really knows their pinks. So yeah, just making it nice, symmetrical, making that little bottom tip nice and pointy, that little inner corner nice and sharp. Put that in the LE dot for 30 seconds. And then I put a matte top coat on and cleansed it, and that's the finished look. I hope you guys learned lots. I hope you're really excited to try this stuff. If you want to see more of my work, follow me on Instagram, Nails by Raquel, Rikel. Thanks guys, bye.